Hey you guys, it's going to be a quick lesson this week since we have a guest lecture as well, but I'm going to go over some things from the book as well as just some general background knowledge and some tips regarding writing from a public relations standpoint, a promotional standpoint, with PR, publicity, advertising, and even a bit on new media. So there's a lot to cover and a lot of different ways in which this can be executed. And so definitely be sure to read chapters 6 and 7 in the book. There's also chapter 8, which is pretty integral into this as well, but it's not required reading. You guys do have to do the portfolio exercise on page 193. And so you're going to think about creating language that is enticing, that is products targeted towards teens with acne. And so you're going to put together the client and product section, which includes some background research and history. And so once you guys start to read through chapter 6 on writing for advertising, you'll have a bit more of an idea of what that entails. But, there's in the grad level courses for both fashion marketing and merchandising, a lot of times the students have to do a SWOT analysis. And so that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's mentioned on page 188 in the book. And just from an overall marketing standpoint, if you formally do this or not with a client, with a product, with something you have to write, it's really important just to, consciously think about it and keep it in mind, because you really need to know if you're writing something about a brand or a company, kind of what their advantages are and unique positioning is, and perhaps what their weaknesses are, so you can avoid discussing those, and where there might be an opportunity by way of advertising or language that you can use to help further the brand, and also what threats may be out there, which can be things that are more sociological or environmental, but also maybe just general competition. And so these are just kind of general marketing, strategies to think about. And so that's gone over in the book a little bit. And it talks about the purpose and the situation analysis, which is really just more of a strategic statement that you put together. And so if you're doing copy editing or copywriting for a PR firm, be it, in-house for a brand or not, or even at a magazine, you may put together some advertising for a brand. You always have to keep in mind and become aware of what the target audience is. So obviously, if you're doing some work that falls under advertising or PR at a magazine, it's your audience. But if it's, for a brand and it's going to go out to a bunch of different newspapers or magazines, you have to really know your customer as well. So just some things to think about, and the longer that you work at a place, this kind of information becomes more common knowledge, and there's always research you can do to find out more. Like, example, for now, with you guys, you have great access in the library to a bunch of databases and journals, which can provide tons of company information for you, demographic, psychographic information to really find out about stats and lifestyle of consumers. And you can do something similar when looking at a magazine. You can really just easily Google and look up magazines, media rates and ad rates, and it usually has a full media kit that describes all about the readership and their demographics and psychographics, as well as pricing information for how much it is, to place an ad in that publication. So when writing about a brand from a marketing perspective, you have to think about a unique proposition or newsworthiness that comes with this particular product or brand. Why would you be placing advertising, or promoting this piece at the moment? And it's most likely because there's something newsworthy about it. So, you have to figure out what is that and make sure that you communicate that clearly and effectively to the consumer. So, for example, if you're doing an advertisement for like a Chanel fragrance, okay, let's say it's like Chance by Chanel. There's many different iterations of that fragrance that have come out. And so if this is a new, fragrance that's in the Coco, the Chanel Chance line, but it's just special for summer, and maybe the bottle's a little different, you probably want to make sure that that clearly comes across to the consumer. And so, if you're writing, this kind of copy for an ad, or if you're writing it in a press release that goes out to the media, you want to clearly outline for them in an easy to follow format that information. And also make easily accessible to them the ability to garner images or any additional materials that they may need, perhaps even a sample, things like that. So what I wanted to speak with you guys more specifically about is the advertorial versus editorial concept. And so in a few of your homework assignments, I have written notes to you guys, and hopefully you've read them, in which I've said this is reading more like an advertorial instead of an editorial piece. So what do I mean by that, and how do you define that and tell the difference between something that is advertorial versus editorial? And so when it's defined as advertorial, it's usually in something, it can be print or it can be digital. And there are certain rules that apply to that relate to disclosure. And so for print, it is absolutely necessary that it says, advertising or advertorial or promotional piece across the top. So it has to be pretty transparent that there's a difference between the editorial pieces in the magazine and one that's a clearly paid placement. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get kind of bummed on myself if I'm just reading through a magazine and read one and don't realize at first that I'm reading an advertorial, and I pretty much read it. And that's actually a sign of a really, really good one, in that the consumer, in a way, just continues to read and assumes that the advertorial piece is just part of the regular magazine. And so that's really doing its job in mimicking, the style and tone of the magazine and appealing to its readers. So in a way, that's the ultimate goal. Sure, there's disclosure on there marking that, it is advertising. But on the other hand, if you didn't see that, you quickly glanced at it, you could easily just consider it being another article. So generally, it can be a little tricky to determine between the two, but usually the font is a little different, the layout is a little different, the image placement is a little different, and they're way more lengthy than would be a normal article in a magazine. And so some of them resemble a market piece, which is when you kind of have different products sprinkled throughout, and then some of them may resemble more of like a straight up written, memoir or opinion op-ed piece, and might be almost a full page of text. So there's different formats that they can take, and depending on the publication, the product, the brand, the company, you could kind of custom which one is best for you. Sometimes brands will do these themselves and submit them to the magazine, and other times brands will pay a little bit extra and the magazine will create this work. So I think I've kind of mentioned this throughout the semester, but I think that, learn by reading, learn by doing, and learn by example are all super important methods in order to become, a better professional, be it in fashion in general or in writing. And so, that's part of the complementary nature of this class, in which I give you guys some reading assignments to do in the book, which is the more academic approach, sharing with you some personal knowledge in more of a lecture format, bringing these guest lectures and having you guys look at some things on your own and build your opinion and build up your critical eye and voice, which is all very important to fashion. So I'm going to give you guys 2 examples from the most recent issue of Vogue. One is Editorial, the other is Advertorial, and I'd like you to think about which one might be which. So, and apologies for my voice. I am in the middle of a cold, so I'm kind of losing it, but I'm going to try to get through this for you guys. All right, so example 1, current issue of Vogue, title, Kindred Souls. Not only do Paul Andrew and Brett Hyman make a great pair of friends, but they've got a new collaboration quite literally afoot this season. Since meeting in 2003 at Gucci, where Hyman was working as Director of Public Relations alongside Andrew's boyfriend, the 2 designers have established their own distinctive brands, run the gauntlet of the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund, and garnered rosters of It Girl followers. Now from their Connecticut weekend homes just minutes apart, the duo has joined forces on a line of footwear that Andrew says could stop a crowded party in its tracks. The collection is a seamless combination of their sensibilities. Silhouettes toe the line between sporty and sensual, practical and playful, complete with the cheekily decorative acrylic for which Hyman's Edie Parker is known. The 7 leather and suede styles rest on sculpted acrylic heels suspended with confetti and loaded with personality, and thanks to the sturdy block construction, even stylish flat lovers will remain in their comfort zone. As Hyman reasons, who knew where the day or night will take you? Rachel Waldman. Okay, so now, option 2. Title, Vision Statements. Fashion designer Karen Walker shares her top sources of visual inspiration, by Gian De Leon. Lauded New Zealand designer Karen Walker made her runway debut in 1998, and since then, she's seen her designs worn by celebrities the world over. Her clothes are known for an exquisite use of pattern and plays on proportion that embody a modern sense of confident femininity. Walker's inspirations vary, but travel makes a big impact. I appreciate the downtime that comes with travel and the vacant hours on long-haul flights for the way they allow the imagination to wander, she says. In Walker's own words, here are 5 ways she finds inspiration, plus how she deals with distraction. Statement in Suburbia. Our spring 2016 collection was inspired by life in the Soviet Union's secret training base, Zvezny Gorodek, I just butchered that, I'm sure, colloquially known as Star City. We came across photos from the early 80s of astronauts in astronaut gear and very chintzy Russian sitting room settings, with carpets nailed to the walls. It was this incredible dichotomy of the high-tech and the suburban aesthetic. It was a little bit grandma-ish, very lacy, floral, and quite puffy. Flowers and Steel. Our latest resort collection, Mujer, is inspired by female revolutionaries of the Spanish Civil War. We found photos of women in floral dresses with military overlays, like gun jackets and military boots. It was this idea of these really strong, capable women being thrust from one life to another and having these 2 aesthetics collide. Parklight. My favorite part of London's royal parks is Regent's Park. Maybe that's because of the time of day when I last visited. It was dusk, it was warm, and the spring flowers were out. Soft sidelight is a real luxury for me because I live in New Zealand. We have a very strong light, everything is sharp. When you're in places where the light is softer, I find that intriguing and quite calming. When you design a park, it's such a selfless act because it's going to take 100 years before it looks good. It's such a luxury to have that sense that someone 200 years ago took the time to care about how the light would cut through an Italian garden on a spring evening, so that when I walked through that gate, it looked beautiful a century later. Okay, So the first option was vision statements, and the second option was kindred souls. Take a moment to think about what I discussed prior, and which one is the editorial, which one is the advertorial. Number 1, kindred souls, advertorial or editorial. Number 2, vision statements, advertorial or editorial. Okay, I won't leave you in suspense any longer. But number 1, kindred souls, was the editorial, and number 2, vision statements, was the advertorial. And so vision statements also had a little, besides it saying advertising discreetly in the upper left, it also said produced by Vogue with I Love. And so I think I Love must be some sort of eyewear brand that has teamed up with Karen Walker and placed this rather well-written advertorial. And it's very, very subtle for their brand, and it's more about the designer and her heritage, because Karen Walker designs eyewear, both eyeglasses and sunwear. So they did a really great job of making this sound very editorial. And I actually didn't even finish reading the whole thing to you guys, but there's about 3 more paragraphs of it. So I think that some of the things to keep in mind when you guys are in a job or position where you are creating this pitch is, regardless of if you're writing for advertising or editorial, you really have to nail down the voice of the audience to which it's being pitched to or shared with. So in a way, regardless of if you are writing something editorial or advertorial, you still have to think from a marketing mindset to a certain extent. And so if you're writing for an online audience or you're using social media, again, you have to disclose that you're writing something and it has an advertising bent to it, or you're being paid. You have to write full disclosure, or like hashtag sponsored, or hashtag ad, things like that, to make it explicit that it's a paid placement. And, like we've talked about kind of creating like this bait click, you can do things like that on social that will usually redirect a reader to back to your blog, where they can read more, where there's another advertorial there, or to the brand's website. But it's really important to make sure that, 1, these things are marked clearly, and 2, you get the right voice and tone down, for the customer, for the publication, for the audience. So you guys will read more about that shortly, and there's no way really of escaping this, when it comes to writing, that at some point or another, there may be a piece that you write that is promotional, and you have to figure out the right tone to write it in which it doesn't seem like it's reaching, like it's too in your face, like it's selling something too hard, that it's giving too much information. So it's very much a delicate balance. But it's something to consider and start to practice for sure. As part of your assignment, you guys are going to look at various forms of advertising through film. And so there's a bunch of different fashion brands that have created videos that are more these amazing, incredible works of art that aren't overt in their promotion of the products. Well, some actually a little bit more than others, but most aren't. But it's still creating an ambiance, a feeling for the brand that is supposed to resonate with the customer, with the consumer, who then has the desire to purchase this product. So it's tapping more into the senses, into the emotions, of the viewer. And so that on such a deeper level is such a harder thing to convey, especially in writing. But once you start to have more of a mastery of that and think about the ways of things that have impacted you, that you've experienced in this capacity, and how you can create something of that nature, it's really powerful, and it can be really cool. So I hope you guys enjoy looking at those videos as part of your assignment. Again, as a reminder, magazines are singular, so they are, if you're talking about Vogue, it's an it, it's not a they. This is so crucial. It is a mistake that students make, and so if you are writing a cover letter to an editor to try to get a job and you refer to their magazine as they, that's it, you're done. So just keep these things in mind. Please read the announcements, the corrections, everything. We just have a few weeks to go. I want you guys to all be in such a much better place with your writing than where you were whenever you started this class. I think it's going to happen for pretty much everyone. I know most of you guys are in this class because you want to be and you want to learn. And so I'm going to share more from you. If there's any other questions you have for me that I can answer, please let me know. Continue to read and think about advertorial versus editorial. Let me know if I can answer any more questions, and I hope you enjoy Megan's guest lecture. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.